So first up, we have Cath Van Tonda, who is the sports chaplain at Kilsyth Basketball. Kath has been involved in the sport as a player, coach, and previously referee, and been at Kilsyth as the sports chaplain for roughly 4 years. She's put a lot of hard work into initiating the drive to change, setting up the foundation, and being proactive in her approach to welfare. Her role has developed over time, and through COVID, the role became critical in engagement, support, and welfare of their officials. She has been described as an absolute treasure in what she has done for Kilsyth. So I will hand you over to her. Give me 1 minute and I will share the screen for you. Thanks, Kath, all yours. I'm assuming everyone can see that? Yep, all yours, Kath.
Thanks, Cathryn. Thanks, everybody. As Cathryn said, I have been involved as a player, a coach and a referee at Kilsyth. I was actually sitting in a church service and this person was talking about sports chaplaincy, and I thought, oh, actually, I think I like that. You know, it involved a love of people, a love of sport. So I took myself along and did the training and absolutely loved it. So I then was at a daughter's basketball game and said to the doorkeeper, hey, do you need a sports chaplain? And she literally grabbed me by the arms and said, yes, we do. We've just had a referee suicide, and he was young. He was about 18 years of age. So I watched my daughter play. By the time I came back, she'd given me the CEOs, phone numbers, emails, names, all the details. So I got in contact with the CEO. It did take a little while before I got engaged into the role, which was the 7th of August 2017. As we had discussions, I said to him, I really feel that my role would be best served alongside the referees. Now, I am available to everybody in the association, but predominantly I work alongside the referees. And he said, great, go for it. So that's how the journey started. I then contacted Sharon Arnold and had a meeting with her and said, okay, how can I help? How is it that we can serve this community? So that's actually how it started and how it developed. I just want to say here, the role of a chaplain is very different at each association. I was actually the second chaplain to be involved in a basketball capacity. So attending stadiums, we now have 4 stadiums at Kilsyth. So what I do is I pick a session. It might be an afternoon, might be an evening, might be Saturday morning. I go, I introduce myself to the supervisors if I don't know them. I chat, I watch an awful lot of basketball, which I enjoy. I then, when there's games have finished, I go into the refs room and just hear the interactions between the supervisors. And for me, it's really, really important to try and remember everybody's names. So that can be quite challenging at times, but that's sort of a goal I really set for myself. Another, yeah, I suppose it is another role in itself, is going to tribunals. You know, for under 18 referees, I sit alongside them, but I'm also there for referees who find it really intimidating to go. Not only do the referees appreciate that, like, as you would all know, I don't actually get to say anything, but the parents really value the fact that Kilsyth has got someone there looking after their kids' backs. So that's, you know, amazing, considering actually I don't say anything. Another thing we do is I go to the first introduction session of a referee school and just introduce myself. Sharon set that up, that the referees to be, the new green shirts coming up, have to bring their parents on that night. So they get to see me as well as the new referees. And again, they really, really appreciate that Kilsyth has provided a chaplain for that. Along with that, I do welfare checks. I check in on our referees, see how they're going, all that, and that's a really broad scope. Engagement of members, I text, I call, face-to-face is really, really important. And what significant to me is that I'm actually a volunteer. As well as going to those stadiums, I fit it in with my family life. So there's no tension at home because, you know, I'm just able to work that in. There was a supervisor at Kilsyth and he was probably a little bit aloof, you know, wasn't really overly friendly to me. And then he turns and he says, "And how much are you getting paid?" And I said to him, "Actually, I don't get paid anything. I'm here because I want to be here, not because I'm paid to be here." And, you know, in an instant, that changed the conversation and we're actually really good mates now. And so that to me is quite significant that I'm doing it as a volunteer. As Cathryn's touched on, impact of COVID, you all know it's been really, really difficult. Here at Kilsyth, we actually lost 65 referees who didn't come back after COVID. And that's 40% of our referees. So that's an enormous hit that we have taken, which then leads to the next point, that there was a number of solos. And you can understand the clubs are getting frustrated because they're paying for 2 refs. So there's just this whole cycle of difficulties that COVID has done. And I do know for a fact that Sharon had 3 to 4 ref schools ready to go before COVID came. So that was a bit of a shame. On top of the impact of COVID, we also gained another venue. So as well as that many loss of refs, it just really, really made our refs very scarce on the ground. So that was really hard. Poor communication. We actually had rule changes during COVID. So when people came back, they weren't really aware of those changes. So that caused a lot of angst for our referees, which was a shame. And the mood of the community, I actually really got this wrong because I thought everybody would be so thrilled to be back on court, get out of our houses, that I actually thought the mood of the whole association and the players would be, and coaches would be really, really uplifted and excited. And what I observed sitting on the sideline was people were more angry, they were more stressed, they were more frustrated. So, and of course, they're not going to take it out on each other. And I saw the refs really cop it, which was such a shame because, you know, we were locked down here, especially in Melbourne, for such a long time. So that I really did get that one wrong. So these were the strategies that I sort of came up with. A friend of mine said to me many years ago, she said, "Kath, the bananas on the outside are easily picked." And I had no idea what she was talking about. I said, "Explain that." And what she was saying was that the fringe people, the people on the outside do often fall away. So I sat and I had a think and I contacted Sharon and I started these fortnightly Zoom sessions where the referees could come on and just have fun. It was lighthearted. We did trivia, we did get to know your supervisor, different sort of questions, and yeah, people really enjoyed that. And like you said, Cathryn, we get to see each other, you know, which was really important. At Kilsyth, there's a social media referees page, so I have access to that to post anything that I like that may be of an encouraging nature. And so that's really, really helpful because a lot of the referees, well, I think there's a bit less going on Facebook, they do come into that referees page. Praise and recognition. When I am the chaplain, I sit for probably 10 minutes each game and I try to find positive things that a referee, it might be a really good call or it might be the way they've handled some sort of situation, that I can then give them feedback that's aside from anybody else. And you can just see that they really appreciate that I've been watching and just the appreciation of praise. I think I wish I had $1 for every time I was asked this, but I get, "Oh, so what does a chaplain do at a basketball stadium?" So I basically just say to people, I'm just like a cheerleader, really. You know, when people are having difficult times, they're down and out, I come alongside them and I cheer them on for better days ahead. And on the flip side of that is I get to cheer them on when good things have happened to them. So, you know, they might have bought a house or got a job promotion or something like that. So just trying to find positives to feed back into them. Visibility, that's really, really important. So in my attendance of the sessions, they get to see who I am, because I think, you know, I'm probably myself a little bit cautious of strangers. So to me, to see someone's face, you're more likely to talk to them and open up to them if you know who they are. And so I don't know if you can see, but I have Chaplain written on my shirt. So it just identifies actually who I am. And I think that that's a really important thing. Vouchers, although I didn't get to implement this, and I do when we get back, I'm going to do $5 vouchers, because a lot of our kids come off the bus to ref. They haven't had their lunch, you know, or their sort of afternoon snack, then they're on court for long periods of time. So just part of that encouragement and promote a really good workplace environment, you know, just a $5 voucher that they can spend at the canteen, you know, and they're fed and they've got a drink. Before Easter, I went and bought Easter eggs, so I would take them into the ref's room and they enjoyed them. At other times, I've just bought a bunch of cinnamon donuts and just said what a good job they're all doing. So I think that's really important, to give positive into their world. And as advice for associations, I'm actually independent. So I think that's really important, that I'm, you know, on nobody's side, so to speak. I am confidential. What is said to me is confidential. And for me, being the chaplain, it's all about relationships. So focusing on the well-being of your community. For me, if I know somebody is struggling with something, it is vital for me to follow them up and keep following them up until I think, you know, they're doing okay. So that for me is something that I'm really big on. Now, take the journey with them. I'm actually not a counsellor. I'm not trained as a counsellor, but counselling sessions might go for 50 minutes to an hour, and then a person is left with that. And so I see myself as a bit of a journey person. So I journey with them, you know, throughout, you know, the days and weeks until they perhaps have another counselling session. So, you know, I'm just not a one-off. I'm actually there for the long haul. Communication, you know, that's vital between, excuse me, associations, you know, Facebook, email. We haven't really got any excuse these days not to have great communication through, you know, our whole associations. Encouragement, you know, that sort of speaks for itself. Any time we can encourage, because really referees do really cop it. So, and that's a really disappointing aspect of the game, and a lot of these kids are under 18. Protection. It was probably 2 years ago now, we had some referees that were manhandled during a grand final when there was a big crowd around, and a spectator actually manhandled them. But it was hard because he denied touching them. But I saw these young referees who are really role models in our referee community. They were physically shaking and they were really, really distressed. And so I guess if I was Oprah Winfrey and had bucket loads of money, I would actually make sure that we all had CCTV cameras just to protect, because, you know, like I said before, they are under 18, and I think it's really important that we protect them as best we can. And all working together. Sometimes I'll listen, and it's even in other associations, there's sort of this real them and us mentality. It's the clubs versus the referees versus the staff. And it just seems, you know, for me, I would really love and just remind all the associations that to be the best association, whilst you can have differences of opinion, you've all got to work to the same goal. And I would think that that would be to be the best association possible. And I put the quote down the bottom that 80% of people feel better after sitting with an active listener. That's actually my job in a nutshell. My job is to be there and is to listen to people. It's not to give advice unless I'm asked for that, but it's just to be that listener. And I think any association, you really do need someone just to be sitting there and listening. And just in closing, like, Kilsyth has been fantastic to me. They have allowed me to develop this role because there is no other referee chaplain role. So they've allowed me to do that. They haven't micromanaged me or any way. They haven't interfered. And to me, for them to give me that amount of trust in the association amongst all their people is quite an honour. So in a nutshell, that's what I do at Kilsyth, Cathryn.
Thank you so much, Kath. That was fantastic. And I really liked a lot of the sort of real life examples. And I'm sure there's many people in this room that can relate to a lot of those things. So thank you. If anyone's got any questions, you can throw them in the chat box, or because we do have a slightly smaller group, happy for someone just to wave at the screen and you can ask a verbal question. Someone is waving at me. I can't see who that is. Kevin?
Rod is.
Yep, go.
Is that Kevin or Rod?
You can go first, Rod.
Okay, thank you.
You're too kind, Kevin.
At Geelong, we had a kid who's doing second year psychology at uni, and he's in the church and decided to take a sort of a gap year, and he did might have been the same one you did, Kath, a course in sports chaplaincy, and he came to the association and asked if he could do a similar sort of job to what you're doing in a voluntary basis. But he had a religious bent on it, in that he wanted to introduce elements of religion into his conversation that put some of the kids offside and made them feel uncomfortable. So as a result, it went nowhere. That's sad from my perspective, but it is an issue if that people associate chaplaincy with a formal religion of some sort, when it really needn't be at all religious. It's an emotional support. It's a sort of social support. It's all, as you say, sit and listening type activities. But that was a real shame from my perspective that sort of stopped it happening in our association, because it's obviously benefited Kilsyth. Did you have any indication about including a religious aspect or not from Kilsyth, or was that not even mentioned?
Well, I am a Christian and I do go to church, but my role at Kilsyth, I'm actually a visitor. I'm a guest, and it's not my job to walk in there and start preaching at people. So I've only ever had one conversation about faith, and a young referee asked me, was his dog going to go to heaven? Mm. So that's actually not my focus, and that's not actually, I would think even sports chaplaincy, that's not actually what it's about. It's about building relationship and caring for people. Yep. So,
thank you. Understand.
Yeah. Kevin, over to you.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, do you maintain any record keeping on, of issues for yourself? And I guess the second one is, what's the point where you feel that you can't deal with the issue and you need to, handle it or bring someone else in to assist you?
Yeah, I have paperwork and I have copies of messages and texts that is on my phone and computer, whatever. For me, I actually each month have what they call a supervisor session. So I actually go for counselling myself. So that's once a month, because I pay for that myself, because I need to make sure that I'm as emotionally healthy as I can possibly be for the community. So that's something I do. If there is a situation, I will refer to counsellors, doctors, psychologists. That's not actually my role to actually, that's up to someone, that person. But my advice would be, okay, I can recommend this person or this person. So that answered your question?
I think the thumbs are up, so that's a good sign. Any other questions? Again, just wave at the screen. Okay, all good. We do have a couple more presenters, so if you think of a question through the next presentation, we'll obviously get another opportunity for some Q&A. So next up, we've got Greg Jeffers and Sophie Foote. So Greg has been involved in the sport as a player, coach, once upon a time referee and administrator for about 25 years. He was head of Basketball Victoria coaching programs in the early 2000s before coming into Eltham as CEO 11 years ago. He has been very big on community engagement, government relations and growth programs, and a key driver in getting the new Montmorency Stadium. His focus is on supporting development of young people in all aspects, and is a big supporter of the Eltham referee program. Special mention to Steve Chad for the introduction. We've also got Sophie, who is the Child Safety and Wellbeing Officer. Greg will discuss her role in further detail shortly. So I will hand over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Cathryn. Chatty and I are tight, so he's spoken very nicely of me, but he claims my refereeing was no good. But I see John Turner's in here, and he was my educator when I started. So shout out to you, John. Thank you for the opportunity. I had the pleasure of jumping in on this group and looking from afar last year for a session. I thought it was fantastic. So thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I guess the key thing from our perspective is that we saw, look, Eltham's a little bit different. I'll explain why in a second for those that are unaware, but we saw this as something that has evolved, we've adapted, we've changed as we've gone along. We've utilised the services of Sports Chaplaincy Australia in the past with great success, but our structure is a little bit different. As Cathryn said, I've been with Eltham for 11 years now. Those that know me from my previous life as a loud coach, please excuse me. I've changed, I promise. I'm a lovely person, and Steve will attest to that. Some short background. I was a swimmer as a kid. I come from a background of, I had a hard-ass coach. That's how you were treated as an athlete. She was brilliant. She's still fantastic to me today, but that was my upbringing as an athlete. You were treated as an Olympian. You behaved that way, and that's how I was brought up. It's how I understood it to be. I got into basketball though at the age of 14, joining a committee at the age of 14, had done a little bit of coaching at 13, and I've coached now for 24 years, and I'm refereeing there for 10 years as well. I must say, before we go into all this, I've lived a very protected and very sheltered life. I haven't been exposed, my childhood was not exposed to any friends or alike that had mental health issues, drug issues. As I said, I've had a very protected and sheltered upbringing. So it's been a lot of learning on the role as we go in this area, and something I've been quite passionate about researching and trying to get my head around how we can do things better. Eltham as a club, we are very large. We aren't a traditional association structure, and I think it's important I make note before I go down our path as a model. You understand why it works for us, and it may not work for others, but you might see what we do as a method to something that fits your association or your referee structure. We're one club. We're an association, but we're one club. So where most of you would have a competition where you've got dozens of smaller clubs competing in your local domestic competition, we're the one club from the bottom all the way through to the top. From our 3-year-old kids to our domestic club to our championship program to our NBL 1 team, everyone wears red and black. You're all basically, a 3-year-old walks into our club and you get labelled red and black. You're a Wildcat from the get-go. So we have 6,000 players that come in under that Wildcat banner, and you wear the one singlet from the bottom to the top. It makes things a whole lot easier, but it makes things a whole lot more complex. And that was probably no more true than when all the government structures around child safety came into play. And for us as an organisation to sit there and if you go through the documentation as it was originally presented, it didn't fit what we do. We were just far too large, and there was no model for us to follow. So we were pretty sloppy early, and we had to work through how it was going to look. We did a lot of research. We engaged with Big Sport. We found no method there. Our own referee branch had a welfare person and continues to have that same welfare person in place today. But we needed something that we're one club, and that includes our referees, scorers, stats, coaches. It includes everyone, and we needed a structure that suited that. It came about, our child safety, welfare, wellbeing program. It all started probably about 2013, 2014. I've been with the club for 2 or 3 years, and I had 2 teenage girls, 2 19-year-old girls who were coaches. They coached under 14 girls and under 16 girls. And their Friday night girls, they reached out to them as coaches, as having issues in their life. Now, I reflect back for just a moment. As a swimmer, as a kid, my outlet was my coach. I went to my coaches like a second mum. I was not going to go to school. And the way I saw it back in 2013, 2014, that schools were incredibly well resourced. Yeah, us as a sporting club, we're bigger than any sporting. We're bigger than any school, certainly any school within the northeastern region, and we're arguably the biggest employer in the northeastern region. So we have multiple responsibilities. These two teenage girls reached out to their 19-year-old coaches with suicidal thoughts. Now, one of these people also happened to be a referee as well. And these two 19-year-old young ladies rang me. Now, I touched on before, I've got no experience, I've got no background, I've lived a sheltered life. And alarm bells were ringing that if this is going on in our club and this is what we're aware of, this is all that we're aware of. Across 6,000 people, there's no doubt there's a whole lot more going on. Now, we linked those two young girls up through professional contacts, and they were well looked after, and they're in a much, much better place now. But it rang alarm bells that this is going on, and we need some structure in place to support not just our youth, that was youth in this indication, but right across our whole organisation. We set about in late 2014, we ran a mental health first aid course. We fully funded that. We put 25 people through it. But I said to you before that we're one club in so many ways, and it was important that when we organised who these 25 people were going to be, that they represented each section of our association. We had young players who would be viewed as leaders by their peers. We had coaches, referees, referee coaches, volunteers, scorers people, stats people, members of our admin program, and also our staff. We're all up making up that 25 that went through a mental health first aid course. They then became our mental health ambassadors, as they were at that stage. And that was no government funding. It was no local council funding. That was us putting up. Look, it would have been $4,500, $5,000, I think it was at that stage, something around that figure to make that happen. Only in the most recent school holidays during a school camp, we're talking 7 years down the track, and one of the young people from that session who happened to be coaching in the camp said to me that he came into the office during the camp and said, "Greg, you'd be pleased to know, 7 years later, I just used one of those tools that I used from that course I used today." That was enough for me. I don't know how many lives we impacted from that course, but that was enough for me that 7 years later, it was still having a positive impact. In about 2016, thereabouts, we developed a child safety panel, and we sort of prior to that got ourselves to the government standards that we needed to have, but we put in place the child safety panel, and it was fully voluntary. It eventually evolved into what we now know as the Child Safety and Wellbeing panel, which has a place on our executive committee of our club as well as our general committee of our club. We targeted and advertised for local experts to help form this panel. We ended up with principals, care workers, police officers, school teachers, in order to develop a club strategy as to how we went about mental health, child safety, wellbeing in our organisation. This is primarily led by a life member of the club, Rachel Morgan, who today still leads the panel. Most notably, it undertook a full review of our club processes, from referees to coaching, to team selections in domestic, to championship trials, right across the board. It was, to be blunt, the results were daunting, they were scary, and incredibly disappointing. As it would be, to be quite honest, we're no different to any club. And we still have our issues today that we need to work our way through. But one major point that came out of it, and to be honest, we laughed at it at the start. It was pie in the sky and we had a laugh. But I quote, "The need for an employee to look after the field." Now, at that stage, we were thinking working with children checks, the police document, you're going, police, kidding me, no chance. But it was part of a review. It was a recommendation from a review, and so we put it up on the wall and said, "Well, this is what we want to get to." We did what a lot of clubs have done and put in place email addresses that had immediate contact and did all that sort of thing. But this employee was up there. It was something for us to work towards as we evolved and we grew and we developed. We worked with different things with the Wellbeing panel, put some more minor things in place between referees, coaches and alike right across the club. But then COVID hit. We put in place a partnership with Headspace in Greensborough. And again, it's not just the announcement. They put on sessions for our coaches and our parents about how kids and young people are going to be returning to sport. They did sessions with our kids themselves around how it's going to look coming back and how they're allowed to feel, and that it's okay to feel certain ways. But at the back of COVID, and from the work that we'd been doing as an entire club, a guy by the name of Jason McClintock from Jasco Consulting reached out to us, and he indicated that he wanted his passion purely is he just wanted to help kids. I didn't need to get his name everywhere as a sponsor. I want to find a way to help kids in the northeastern region, and he's heavily involved with Diamond Valley as well. And so we thought, well, maybe this is our chance. We've had this sitting on there. Maybe this is our chance to get an employee in the role. He's passionate about kids. He knows that kids are dealing with more troubles and people are dealing with more troubles than what we all did 20, 25, 30 years ago. Is this a method to get us that employee? We pitched a proposal to him. We went through a few discussions, and such is now we've got Sophie Foote employed in an 8-hour-a-week job. I must point out, she's not our chaplain. She's not our first point of contact. If people are having struggles, she's not our go-to person. We deliberately don't have her in that role. We have volunteers in support to be that. But Sophie's there to ensure of our processes, our structures, ensure we look after inclusion. Recently, we were all preparing for Pride Round, which we haven't done in the past, but our Pride T-shirts went out and sold hundreds at a click of the fingers. And so Sophie was a person who was she was a volunteer on our panel. She's an ex-player. She's passionate about the industry. We thought, instead of advertising, this is one of our young people. This is a kid from our club. Say she's a kid, it's terrible. She's a young woman who was a kid in our club. She's got her own story, which she's always comfortable. She's comfortable talking about in her own time. But let's get her in for an interview. And so Rachel Morgan, myself, Jason McClintock have all had the opportunity to sit with her separately. And to be honest, she blew us away with her passion and excitement to get involved and drive child safety, wellbeing, and inclusion within the club. And that incorporates it's the referees, it's the coaches, it's the players, it's the staff, it's the volunteers, scorers, stats. She's across the whole board. And so, to be honest, the interview turned into Sophie presenting to us. And me feeling kind of silly as the CEO as to how this interview went. But with that, what I'd like to do is to provide Sophie the opportunity to discuss what her role is, what she's doing, and what her plans are for the club in the near future.
Hey guys, how you going? Can you hear me all good? Give me a thumbs up. Cool. Firstly, thank you for having me tonight, guys. Like Greg said, I'm very passionate about this stuff, and I'm just so happy, it's here and it's being talked about. Now, I do have a presentation. It won't be as beautiful as Kath's, unfortunately, but if I just click share the screen and I'll host disabled. Do you mind, Kath, just letting?
All good. Go.
I'll just get this one up. Beautiful. It's just here. Here we are. All right, so Greg did touch a bit onto it already. Sorry, my computer's just freezing now, of course. Here we are. So I'm Sophie Foote, and I'm the Child Safety Wellbeing Coordinator Officer down at Eltham Wildcats. Sorry, give me a moment. So yeah, about me in the role. So like Greg has said, I've been here since I was 5 years old at Eltham Wildcats. So I've been involved in all areas of the club. I've played, I've coached, I've been part of the administration, the Child Safety and Wellbeing Committee. So for me, growing up, it was pretty awesome to see where the club is now and just what it has grown into. And I give credit to the club and Greg and the volunteers behind that. They have cared since day dot and they want to put those people forward. And like he's mentioned, I'm really passionate about that. So when this position was up, I had to jump on it and say, this is what I want to do. I've got my personal experience with mental health and I had to stop playing because of that. So I know from that personal experience, it really has helped me in this role and some ways to go about it. And recently last year, I completed community services certificate. So that's really, again, just helped me intertwine everything together. And yeah, just quickly to say, I'm just so happy it's here. And if you guys do have the opportunity to get anyone in, or if you want to ask any questions, reach out at all. I'm more than happy to sit down with you guys, have a chat, whatever I can do, just let me know. Just a bit about the role too. Greg has covered it a bit, but it's just basically my main job is to raise that awareness of child safety, mental health, wellbeing programs, plans and initiatives. To support and promote a culture of best practice and the implementation of child safe standards. So clearly our club has that junior level to senior, but with what Greg mentioned, we realised we had to go off a structure. So in that being said, we had to look at the child safe standards. So I won't go through all of them. I'm sure you guys might be aware of some, but I recommend to people that haven't seen these ones as well as others before, definitely give it a Google, look them up. This is what we base our strategies off, and something we do really refer to, as well as when dealing with senior levels, other things come into play, obviously. But just quickly, so the governments and leadership, clear commitment to child safety, code of conduct, human resource practices, responding and reporting, risk management and mitigation, empowering children. So I think it's all pretty safe said, those ones. And if you have any questions at the end, or I recommend just Google any kind of standards that refer to your own club. Couldn't recommend it more. Basically, so just to cover, it's my goal to have everyone at Eltham Wildcats Basketball Club to have a safe, connective, enjoyable experience, and to continue to create and expand on a safe and inclusive culture for all, in every area in the club. So for me, that is, basketball is a safe place for someone. I don't think there should be any, diversity that comes into it where that should be, not respected. And that's something I really want to promote at our club, and that inclusive culture. So some plans to achieve. I won't keep going too much because I could talk all night, but I'll go over some main points. So that's just working in all areas of the club to ensure all policy and processes have that child safety and wellbeing of participants at the forefront of mind. So we do have policies and procedures in place now, as I'm sure you guys already do. And it was actually getting some of those out, looking through, seeing what we have to change and update. And it's a constant thing we're going to have to do in the future, as well as working closely with the Wildcats community itself. So I'm in the process of going into different areas of it, getting different representatives of players, coaches, all the stakeholders, and really having a good chat with them, seeing what's going on, where their concerns are, what's working for them, just getting that inside perspective. Because as much as I have been here all the time, everyone has different concerns and different opinions. And I think it's really important to get that whole inclusive, opinion. As well as we have those monthly child safety and wellbeing panel, which is amazing. They're such a great bunch of people that really do just care. And our proud partner, Headspace Greensborough, constant check-ins with them, and the great relationship we have with them is actually comes down to that referral point. I know Kath did mention a bit, it gets to a point where what do you do? What are you qualified with? How do you handle it the best? And that's the best part of our partnership there, is when we do have that concern, we have that direct link that we can go with. So again, it's just, if you can reach out and network to anyone close by, I couldn't encourage it more, because everyone's so willing to help, is what I've found out. So our local council, things like that, our Eltham High School who we're attached to, I've been constantly having meetings with these people and networking, creating those relationships, because if you can get that broader audience, why not, is in my perspective. I'm trying to speak here. But anyway, just with all appropriate services and organisations I am reaching out to, just locally and further if necessary. And again, that networking is just growing and growing. So again, raising awareness and providing education relating to child safety and wellbeing to the club. So like Greg touched on, we did have mental health training happen. And again, that's just an update, getting as many people educated all over the club. And I think it really comes down to that, and it's very important in the big scheme of things if we want to make that difference, because wherever they reach out, you want them to have the best possible, education behind them when helping. And again, to have that consistent and ongoing communication about these areas using our club's social media and prowl, as well as the website. So we're really lucky with having that audience and those platforms to use. So it's a constant putting things out there, trying to take advantage of those, platforms, as well as building awareness around other issues such as bullying and harassment. And we're really trying to promote that no tolerance approach throughout the club. And another thing we're doing is updating our website. So we do have a wellbeing section now, but don't look at it because it's ugly and we're working on it. So that's another thing we want to do. We want to make that direct place that people can go to. So it's not just a few names and things. We want some links. We want some videos. We want to use that space as best as we can. Another one is identifying development important dates of recognition. So that's what Greg was touching on for those inclusion, as well as just promotion and making sure people are talking about it. So it's Are You OK Day, Pride Month, things like that. So just really ensuring that's being talked about. Another goal of ours in the future is to establish age group wellbeing violation. Oh, I can't speak tonight, ignore me. But we really want to have those, again, that direct help. So each age group has someone to reach out to, then that could be forwarded to me or Rachel on the wellbeing. And then we've got provide opportunities for those economically and socially disadvantaged. So that's another future one. We're very privileged in where we come from and our club. So again, we're looking in future of how we can reach out to those further communities and include other things in future. I know we did touch a bit on this, but the returning to basketball post-COVID. So what we have been doing during the COVID outbreak is putting some videos out, some photos, putting the prowl out, things like that, which has been really positive. But what we will continue to do is in the coming weeks, continue just to promote that kind of stuff. I know Greg mentioned last year we held a boxing out anxiety session with our partner Headspace, and preparing for return to basketball newsletter was sent out. So that's just a lot of links, a lot of education, as I've mentioned again. And we just really want to keep doing that because, the louder you are with it, more people hear it. Even if it's annoying them, I don't mind. So another one that's very important I wanted to mention is our NBL1 star, Annalee Maley. So she's a face that has been around Eltham since she was a kid. So she played under 8s there and grew up. She's played for Australia. She's been part of the Opal squads, and a lot of the kids look up to her. Most kids know her, and what we want to present through the club is ambassadors like Annalee that these kids can look up to. It can be normalised. These things like mental health and these scary subjects for some people can be a normal conversation. So I'm going to show you just this little clip. It's funny. She's got a hole in her knee. She's just down. It's classic Annalee. It's just so, it's not planned. It's just a little kind of chat, and I just like to see how you think.
Classic Eltham background, Sophie.
Oh,
Annalee Maley here.
What was that?
Just saying, classic Eltham background.
Exactly, classic Eltham.
Hey guys, Annalee Maley here. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some mental health tips during this lockdown. It's really important that we're taking care of not just our bodies physically, but also our mental health. One thing that I love to do is get out and explore some of the great things that Eltham has to offer. I spend my hours during the day outside and really taking in everything around me. It's a mindfulness tip of mine to kind of like feel my feet on the ground and kind of take everything in and just be silent for a little bit while I'm sitting out here. I really encourage everyone to just get outside for a little bit every day and take in what you have around you, whether it's a park or just a walk on the street.
So as you can see, it's like such an authentic thing. It's just Annalee speaking from the heart. She has her own experience, and that's something I want to continue to do down in the track months from now, hopefully out of COVID, where we can do breathing exercises, check in on the Instagrams, socials, and say, hey, did you have a stressful day today? Here's a breathing technique you can use. Little things like that, I think will make just a big impact in the long run. And just, this is an example, just some things we've been sharing around newsletters and things like that, just little tips, little simple things, putting those supports out there, links that they can click on, just as much as we can when we can. So just for summary, just direct communication with stakeholders and everyone, networking, because everyone loves it. They'll get on it. And when it's to do with mental health, I'm just finding everyone is for it these days, and I'm so excited. Education for all. I know money can be an issue a lot of the time, but the more I'm doing with researching in different areas, you can apply for grants through basketball clubs, and it's all government funded. So just look into it. I really, really recommend it. Again, promotion, just keep putting it out there, and just keep creating an inclusive and safe culture. That's all from me. If you guys have any questions at all, if you want to reach out or chat, please, my email's right here on the screen now. Would love to chat to you guys, and yeah, all the best.
So, Cathryn, you can see why we try to, you touched on, I think Chatty put it as part of what we do. It's all about trying to have the kids from within our club get the first opportunity to be able to roll out programs and put things in place. And as you can see from Sophie, she's quite passionate about the topics that we build and implementing them within our club. So thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Well, thank you.
Thank you both, Greg and Sophie. Greg, it was really good to hear, I guess, the pathway and the background and the long process that it's kind of been underway for a number of years. My takeaway is this doesn't happen overnight. So although we're having this session, it's starting the discussion, but we can't expect things to change overnight. So that was a really good takeaway for me, Greg. And Sophie, it's great to see some of the actual sort of hands-on initiatives, similar to what Cathryn was talking about earlier in the strategies category. So again, thank you to both. Does anyone have any questions? Again, wave at the screen. I can see pretty much most people that have their videos on. So wave or shout out if you've got any questions. Rod, again, yep. Over to you.
I always like to jump in first. First, congratulations, Greg and Sophie. Your initiative and your passion are tangible. If I can be a sort of bit of a devil's advocate, with any group of people, a large number of people, there are external frustrations, external mental pressures that come into the organisation from the outside. I would argue that that's a fair amount of the pressure that they bring into the association is because of family issues, social issues, relationship issues and so forth. But within the actual basketball arena itself, from my observation, the biggest incidence of overt mental pressure occurs between coaches and players and or referees. What has Eltham done to attempt to moderate what is culturally seen as okay to have a go at the referee, even when they're 14 or 15-year-old learners?
Coach from the coaches?
Yeah.
It's topical, isn't it?
Yep.
Look, I think what I observed, and I speak, again, I flag Rod, I was a terrible coach. So let me declare that very early, because there's people in here that know me previously. We've worked really, really hard in terms of having the right people involved. And I'm going to speak from a championship perspective, because at our domestic club, we have some issues that we've recently swung action to try and fix, successfully and unsuccessfully. At a championship level for some period of time, we've gone with the attitude of you either fit the way we want to operate, and you either adjust to the way we want to operate and how we be perceived from a club point of view, from a cultural point of view, or you move on. It doesn't matter how good that person thinks they are or how they're perceived as a coach in terms of their strength. You're either in it for the kids and the best interest of the kids, or you're out. I'll give you one very, very fine example of an individual who we build our club culture on. It's Craig Stratford. So Craig's our under-18, currently our under-18 boys coach, but he's got famous at a junior level from coaching 14s. And the way he conducted himself with his players and the way he conducted himself towards the referees then became the model of what we wanted to promote amongst all our coaches. So it was only last week with Chatty, in partnership with Chatty and the referee branch, that Craig was our coach speaking to our referees about what we teach, what coaches are teaching athletes and why. And I think Chatty would agree it was an eye-opener to even our more senior referees as to what was getting taught. But then vice versa, we gave the referees a chance via Chatty to speak to our coaches about how referees are calling things and why. And so I guess what I'm saying to you is we've seen that we've got a problem, the same as everyone does, and we've tried to take a different tact. Let's get our coaches and our referees talking to each other from an educational point of view to try and understand where the other one's coming from. At a domestic level, we operate in the biggest stadium we have is a 3-court stadium. We use a lot of single courts for our domestic club. So I think we're about 9 stadiums or something we utilise, most of them single courts. We have venue staff, venue admins, most of whom themselves are between the ages of 16 and 21. They were sort of observing this poor behaviour, but there was no follow through. There was no track record. There was no way for us to hear, Rod, that you were being trouble on a Saturday over at the Viewbank Stadium with it's a single quarter. There was no way to track that unless you're actually reported. So what we've done is put, I guess, an intermediary step. And if you're yelling out at the referee, how long, it's not enough to be reported, but we're seeing some behaviour out of you that we think isn't acceptable. Then we're asking our venue admins have got a Google sheet that they would put, hey, coach of under 9 E37, constant badgering of the referees. Is it reportable? No, it's not. If it was to say yes, it is, then that takes you automatically to a Basketball Victoria tribunal form. But we've tried to set about having a tracking form for parents and coaches that we can keep an eye on and then we can educate. So it's more of a more recent thing rather than a longer term, but that's what we're best way I could describe how we're trying to curb that behaviour.
No, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go, Mark. Sorry, John, I'm coming to you next. Mark, you posted in the chat, Kath. All you.
Hang on. So, firstly, Greg, there's nothing wrong with you as a coach, mate. Never had any issues with you from my dealings.
Thanks, mate.
So, thanks for taking the time to go through this stuff with us. You just touched on there that you've got a lot of your supervisors are around the 16 to 21 age group. Some of them may be able to deal with conflict, some of them may not. Are there any, and Sarah can probably answer this as well, are there any sort of programs that you've put in place for that sort of conflict management space for those types of younger supervisors?
Not enough. Look, we're lucky that the administration program we have is all kids that come from within the club. We have some white collar workers, so financial advisors, engineers, people who actually have a full-time job, then also choose to work for us after hours in a casual basis. And most of them take on mentoring roles. So they would actually match up with those kids when they start at 14. They're educating those 14, 15, 16-year-olds precisely on this sort of stuff. Conflict management. How do you handle the grumpy guy who walks in off the Monday night over 30 men's, or over, let's be honest, over 45 men's game? How do you handle that guy? How do you handle the situation between the referee and the mum on a Saturday game? So there's no formal training. I don't know how to do that in a cost-effective manner yet, except for the mentoring system we've got within our administration program. And that's not something I implemented. That's something that the club had 30 years ago, of which we're a beneficiary today to continue rolling. And we've got these people that were not good players. They just love basketball. They got involved in administration program, and despite going on bigger and better things, they still active at least once or twice a night and able to help us out.
Cool. Thanks, Greg.
John, over to you.
Yeah, just a quick one. Get off the screen, Mark, so I know who I'm talking to. Greg, do you have any experiences of coaches or viewing coaches who are abusing their players? And how do you deal with them? And do they accept the suggestions that you give them?
Yeah, I've got a lot of examples. They're not good. Look, I think what we've been trying to educate our coaches on is that coaching's changed. what was acceptable 15. I'm sure referee coaching is the same way. The way we behaved and the way we conducted ourselves 15 years ago towards players was acceptable. It was okay. But you can't do it now. It's evolved and it's changed. I think as a general rule, most of the people that were behaving that way have been, for a general rule, most of them have been weeded out. They find their way back in, they change clubs, that sort of thing. My advice to all our championship coaches is you record every game. My advice to the parents is you record every game. Get on the camera. And someone mentioned it before about videoing matches. We're trying our hardest to get as many cameras into stadiums now as we can, because the only way coaches believe, to be quite honest, we're all exactly the same. You don't believe how you're perceived. You don't believe how you're seen until you actually see it for yourself. Yep. And that's, if we can get every Friday night game video, then if a parent has a gripe, or if there's an allegation that a coach has behaved poorly towards a referee, then it's there. And I think we would probably all agree that behaviour on a Friday night is significantly better to domestic. At least that's certainly in my years of experience, that's true. Domestic, we have a lot less cameras and a lot less coverage of games, and that's where most of the issues arise. And that's why we're trying to get cameras now, if we can, in different venues to cover us, because you're right, it's an issue, and most people don't believe that, you know, if three parents come and raise an issue of conduct against the coach towards the players, the coach is going to argue, well, no, they should have turned up to training, or no, they should have tried harder or run harder, or no, that's not how I said it. It's only if you have camera footage that you can really prove that, and that's certainly what we're trying to work to get towards, John.
Good idea.
All right. Not that we're going completely off topic, but the discussions that we're having could essentially make another nights of webinar just around supervisors, conflict, handling complaints within an association. So keeping on topic in terms of, I guess, the welfare of our officials. What I'd like to do now, if you would like to stay online and be a part of this, it's a really great sort of discussion opportunity as well as networking. I'm just going to put you into some small groups, sort of maybe 5 or 6 people per group, and you can have the same discussions that we're having in this big forum, but in smaller groups. Get to know the people around you at different associations, but also have some of these discussions that you've just started to, I guess, talk about. And then certainly if there's anything that anyone wishes to then share back with the group following the next sort of 10 minutes, we can then come back as a main group if everyone is comfortable with that. Essentially, it's going to pop up on your screen to jump into a breakout room, click OK, and it will just spit into a room automatically assigned. So stay tuned. Give me a second. Let's just do this.
Discussion. Good, healthy discussion. Never miss an opportunity to have a bit of a dig and a go and a probe and a. You know,
I don't mind it at all, Neil. I don't mind it at all.
No, I thought you'd enjoy it.
I did.
All right, I'm going to be rude, Neil, and put everyone back on mute, just very briefly. But is there anyone from any of the groups that would like to share any of their thoughts, observations, discussions within the smaller groups? Again, just wave or shout out. Go, Chatty, all yours.
Yes, I managed to unmute myself. The things that Kath said originally about the anger coming back and the conflict coming back resonated with every single one of us in our group. We'd all experienced the same thing, the same loss of numbers, the same anger from mainly parents, sometimes coaches, not players. The players were incredibly keen to get back, but everyone else around the place seemed to get very, very angry, and we've all seen it. I'm surprised. I thought it was almost unique to us it seems it's consistent for all of us.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just add as well. We spoke about that exact turn. That's the general consensus from our group, is that it was probably worse than some of being behaviour. So I think we just spoke about continuing to do the right thing and fight the good fight and make an example of those people that do the wrong thing, and hopefully the wheels will turn, because with mental health stuff involved, it's going to be more and more challenging. And you had a complication of retention numbers taking a hit as well, and new referees coming. The last thing you need is an environment that's going to be so hostile that it actually puts people off signing up at all. So look, I'm a real strong advocate for putting strong policies in place and really stamping out whatever you can, and that means people are given long suspension terms, and so be it.
Cathryn, just from our group, we sort of discussed more about the age gap and what we class as a senior, or as I can't think who it was, one of the other guys comments, we've got to differentiate between senior and experienced referees. So when you've got parents out there, because I'm in my 40s, they assume that I'm a senior referee. I've only been refereeing for 5 years and I'm a B grade, whereas my son, who's been refereeing the same time and is the reason I got into refereeing, is now a level 1 up in VJBL. So, just combating that just because you're senior in age doesn't mean that you're a senior referee, and sort of letting people know that people start refereeing at all different ages, and that, even, Daniel, when I first started, gave me the option of wearing a green shirt or not, because of my age. Now, I opted to wear a green shirt purely for the reason that I wanted people to realise that I was new to the game. So, just things like that. We found that also the way that they talk at different ages, the way we've sort of been brought up, and more having a positive conversation with people. Okay, yes, that's the way you were brought up. That's how you were speaking to people and everything like that. But it's got to be toned down a bit. And the same with the kids, the way they speak to referees and things like that. And just explaining, what's acceptable and what's not. So sort of working within the group to do that.
Yep. Good observations. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else from any of the other groups? No, everyone's coming up to the hour and a half and we're all ready to have our dinner and wind up for the night. So I guess I will wrap up, but I guess before we finish up, just on behalf of the group, I want to say a massive thank you to both Greg, Kath and Sophie for taking the time to be here tonight and present on what I think is an incredibly important topic. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure that I can say the same on behalf of everybody else, that I hope that someone and everyone has taken, even if just one thing away from it. That officially does end the formalities for tonight. As mentioned earlier, if you would like to stay on the line and just have a bit of a social catch up, you're more than welcome to. I do stop the recording here, so whatever happens after this happens after this. But yeah, thank you again for everyone for coming tonight, and I do hope that we're going okay, and fingers crossed we get the kids back out on court in the next week or so. Have a good night, everyone.